Y'all ready for this? Welcome to Sports Kid Drama Kid. I'm Jim. I'm the Sports Kid.
I'm Andi. I'm the Drama Kid.
And if you'd like to support our show, you can do that on Patreon now.
We have a Patreon now.
Patreon.com/SKDK pod, or in the descriptions of this episode or any of our episodes, or on our social media, which you can also follow us on.
Search it on Google.
Yeah, head over to TikTok and follow us there. If you haven't, we've been posting a bunch of clips and things. Thanks for the Patreon subscribers we've already had.
Yes, thank you so much.
And we are going to get into another football episode today, Andi, as evidenced by my jersey.
I mean, you could have worn that just for fun.
So I recently went home and my mom dug out.
I was there too.
Well, I was just going to say, we were there. I went home with Andi to my parents' house, and my mom dug out a bunch of my old jerseys that were like still in decent condition. And I was like, yes, I want those, because I had pretty much forgotten about them. And one of the jerseys was a Jaguars Byron Leftwich teal blue home jersey that I got because it looked cool when I was a kid.
You had a lot of jerseys from a lot of different teams, and I was very confused because I was like, these are not the Packers.
Yeah, all the Packers ones were gone because I think either they were sold because they would sell at like a garage sale, or they were worn so much that they were worn out.
I didn't realize that it was a thing that you would just buy jerseys from people on other teams that you just kind of liked.
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of a frat bro culture thing now to like show up to the tailgate or whatever with a jersey, but have it be one that's like, whoa, why do you have
why do you have that jersey?
Whatever. I didn't really do that in college. Like, they just sat in my home, but I do have like a Jeremy Shockey Giants jersey, a Sean Alexander Seahawks jersey, a Cordell Stewart Pittsburgh Steelers jersey, and a meme Brett Favre on the Jets jersey that my dad got basically to make fun of us at home and troll us when we were kids and
including
Packer fans.
himself.
Including himself, yeah. He got it sort of as a troll. Anyway, jerseys aside, we are talking football again, Andi.
Okay.
And today's topic is one similar to Deflategate. It follows in the gate trajectory of gates.
Good. Another gate.
Another gate opens today, and that gate is Bountygate.
Okay.
Do you know anything about Bountygate?
Bounty, in my mind, has two definitions. One of them is paper towels.
Okay, yes.
And the other one is like a bounty hunter. And I don't see how either of these relate to football. Maybe like they spilled the big thing of Gatorade and they needed a lot of paper towels.
Yeah. That double ply bounty.
The quicker picker upper.
Yeah. That actually reminds me, when I was really young, I needed to do like a science experiment to basically show that we knew how to do like the scientific method.
Yeah.
And I did it on the absorbency of different paper towel brands.
Oh, you like tested a whole bunch?
Yeah.
What was your conclusion?
I don't remember.
Oh, well.
For the sake of this show, it was Bounty. Okay. Well, anyway, neither of those things are really about what we're talking about today.
Oh.
You did mention Bounty Hunter. Do you know any famous bounty hunters?
Dog the Bounty Hunter? Which, like, I barely remember. It was a reality show?
We could probably get it on Max now.
Now that we probably can. And now I'm just realizing, because I remember that being like a cultural moment, but I never watched it. And I'm like, how do you get away with doing a show about a bounty hunter? Like, bounty hunting is not legal.
I don't remember what dog was hunting.
This is not the right podcast for this.
No. Well, I always think of Boba Fett from Star Wars.
Oh, was he a bounty hunter?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, none of the bounty hunters that we talked about there or know of are what we're talking about
So
today.
we're still not getting close to...
Not really. That's great, though, because we're setting a blank slate here. A real tabula rasa on Bountygate for Andi. All right.
Now
so
I have really no idea what I'm about to hear.
I'm going to start with a little monologue to open today because I got to lay a little bit of the groundwork on what we're talking about today, and then we'll just kind of get right into it.
Okay.
So I'll start there today.
Go for it.
American football was invented in the late 1800s. A game between Rutgers and Princeton is often considered to be the first football game.
Go New Jersey.
The sport, which was derived from soccer and rugby, initially looked a lot more scrummy than it does now, with large groups of men tackling each other in disorganized piles, which I think you still see when you watch.
I was like, that sounds right.
As the game evolved to incorporate downs and huddles and plays, it did not evolve to include helmets, pads, or safety precautions for quite some time. The game was extremely violent in the early days. In 1905, at peak Gladiator Thunderdome football, there were 19 deaths caused by men playing football. Yeah. It was so violent that Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Rider and carrier of a big stick himself, threatened to abolish the game unless changes were made to make it safer. TR.
Oh my God.
In response to Teddy's request, they made some field and rule changes to try to keep people a little safer. Among other things, they abolished the use of giant 300-style Spartan Warrior V formations, where players ran at full speed around a single ball character, ramming into the defense and breaking legs and skulls in the process.
Oh my God.
What they didn't do was introduce any padding or safety equipment, out of a fear of being seen as a bunch of weak little babies. In order to cut down on some of the second-degree murder, helmets were first introduced in the early 1900s, but weren't required until the mid-1940s. The first helmets were like a leather version of those ear flap winter hats that Kyle Broflovsky wears in South Park, with about as much protection as a cartoon hat. In 1949, the NFL first introduced plastic helmets, and in the mid-1950s, a single bar face mask was added to these helmets. They added more bars to the face masks over the years, when it became clear that a single bar in front of a guy's face acted more as an easy way to yank a guy's head into the ground than a safety measure. However, the single bar face mask wasn't officially banned until 2004. Often kickers and punters would wear them just to keep a face mask basically out of their way completely.
I see. Well, because they always dress up the kicker as if he's going to like do more than kick the ball. And like, no disrespect to kickers. I love kickers. But I do think it's funny that they're like, they trot him out in his uniform.
Yep, the same uniform as all the other players.
And it's like, he's not going to get on the field after that.
It wasn't until the mid-1950s that shoulder pads were common. But even then, players who wore them were often made fun of for being overly sensitive.
Oh my God.
The first shoulder pads were a step in the right direction, but provided about as much shoulder protection as a Paula Poundstone blazer. A reference that has only been approved for people aged millennial and above.
I'm just shocked that you brought that reference to me.
I think it was Hollywood Squares. Wasn't she on there a lot?
Yeah.
So I saw that a lot growing up.
Okay, well, we've never discussed Paula Poundstone, but now we're going to.
In 1979, strides were made when the NFL banned the use of the helmet as a weapon. You could no longer lead with the head like a human body ballistic missile, or you'd be penalized, which was cool.
Sure.
For safety.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Throughout the 80s and 90s, the game itself was still very violent, but at least the pads were pretty big. It was obvious that football was an injury risk, so players wore bulky shoulder, hip, knee, and thigh pads during this time. But as the 2000s approached, this went out of style and function, with players nowadays trying to strike a balance with their padding, somewhere between stylish, functional, and protective.
Yeah, we're getting like an upside down triangle look where it's like heavy on the padding at the top of the body and then
almost nothing
and
below.
Then just gorgeous gams
keep
under.
The legs free to run and do athletic things.
Yeah, and then I always feel bad when the players have like white pants because I'm like, no one looks good in white pants, even
so
if
many
you got nice legs.
In 2009, they first made rules to hold players out of a game that displayed signs of a concussion. Before that, you had to be knocked out cold to be forced out of a game. But as we saw last season, even with all the concussion protocols and the training staff evaluations, players are often still let onto the field with a variety of injuries, including severe head trauma. The effects of concussions and other injuries on NFL players' long-term health are better known than they've ever been. But slight adjustments to rules and helmet technology can only do so much to deaden the impact of a sport that has violence at its core. And that's the end of my little background history on football safety. So before we get into the rest of the episode, I have one question for you, Andi.
Yeah.
In the spirit of football doctors, how many fingers am I holding up?
Wait a minute. You're okay. 9?
9 fingers, which leads us perfectly and not forced in any way back to 2009.
Oh my God.
Where today's story begins.
Jesus. Okay.
All right. The New Orleans Saints NFL team played the Minnesota Vikings in the 2009 NFC Championship game, which is
the game before the Super Bowl to pick who from the NFC is going to the Super Bowl.
Against the winner of the AFC side.
Right. You didn't ask for that information, so don't act like I left it out.
All right. So the QB for the Vikings at this time was none other than former Packers legend Brett Favre. Yep. I wrote down here, seeing Favre play for the Vikings sucked. Throughout that big game, the Saints defense was particularly aggressive toward Favre.
Uh-huh.
And I want to jump right into highlights of that game and show you what that looked like. Really what you're looking for here is just like Brett Favre getting hit.
Okay.
So
I think I can handle that.
I'm going to go to this sort of inciting incident, if you will. And this is in that Vikings 2009 NFC Championship game against the Saints.
Okay.
Now they hand it to
Percy
Harvin.
What the heck?
Yeah, so Favre, what happened there?
He hands the ball off, and then someone just like chest bumps him to the ground.
Brett Favre again took another
like
hit.
After he already handed the ball off.
Yeah. Off the field as he walks back into the huddle.
They're going to show it in slow-mo.
You're going to see him right here. The left
there he
side.
goes. He hands it
just
off.
Comes up and Favre was working that way to make the hand.
Yeah, so Brett hands the ball off and then just gets laid out like a full 2-3 seconds after.
I mean, did the player who knocked him down think that he still had the ball? Did he just do a really good job of faking a pass?
I think the Saints player just like laid him out after he handed it off just to like be aggressive.
Okay.
And then in the third quarter, Favre throws an interception and then he gets absolutely wrecked after that.
Okay.
And this hit in particular is one that is sort of noticed by people on the sideline as being like pretty violent.
Okay.
2nd and 8, and he's picked off. Favre needs help getting off the field.
Jesus.
Jonathan Vilma comes up with the interception.
So what happened there was 2 Saints defensive linemen sort of hit Favre, one at his legs, sort of grabbing him, and then one on top while the legs are being grabbed.
Yeah.
Which is seen as like a really dirty sort of hit in the NFL. You don't want to have a quarterback or any ball carrier like grabbed by one player and then hit on the top from the other direction, because it sort of forces your body in 2 separate ways at once.
Yeah.
So yeah, you saw Favre like 3 to more times throughout this game is just hit by Saints defenders.
Was everybody mad at Brett Favre? Is this like a Julius Caesar situation or like something? That's what it reminds me of.
That they're going after him.
That like they're all going after him because like, did he sleep with somebody's wife or something?
Well, he is just Brett Favre in general. So, not the most likable guy.
Yeah, no.
At the time, he was more beloved by them.
He has revealed himself to be even less likable in recent years.
Yes.
Stealing welfare money to pay for his daughter's college volleyball
arena. Yeah, we should get into that, and we probably will. For right now, Brett Favre is a 2009 Vikings trader and quarterback. After the NFC Championship game, Vikings personnel had concerns about the Saints defense and the way they were going after Favre. Like you said, like sort of going at him in an aggressive Julius Caesar takedown kind of way. The Saints personnel are particularly upset with that high-low hit from McCray and Ayadele, these 2 defensive linemen who hit Favre. After this game, Vikings coach Brad Childress felt the Saints players went after his players maybe in illegal ways on at least 13 different plays, and many of them weren't actually called penalties.
So I have a question about this.
Yeah.
If they don't make certain calls on the field in football, is there anything that can be done after the fact?
Actually, yeah. Nowadays, they will review plays after the game, even if it wasn't called on the field, and issue fines sometimes.
Oh, so they just fine them money.
Suspensions sometimes.
But like, the outcomes of the games will not be reversed.
No, not usually.
Okay.
Maybe it would affect their ability to play in future games, like those individual players, but not that game.
Whenever they find people, I always think it's funny because it's like there's so much money. It's like you're not really even punishing.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, that's a whole can of worms. Like fines in the NFL and in all leagues seem to be very, very small compared to salaries.
Yeah, like if I got in trouble and someone was like, you're being fined $0.25. It's like when you like curse and like someone's like, put it in the swear jar. It's like, oh, it's $0.25. I don't know.
I'll swear all I want and just pay $5.
Right, exactly. That's kind of how it feels.
The Vikings coach and all the people on the sideline are like, what was going on there? Favre was getting just targeted like crazy. Punter Chris Cluey and kicker Ryan Longwell, they had plenty of time to watch the game because they're kicker and punter.
All dressed up and nowhere to go except to
get those legs going every once in a while. So they were wondering aloud after the game to like, media and stuff, whether the Saints were specifically trying to injure Favre because of the beating that he took.
Is that like a thing kickers do where they're like, I watched the whole thing really closely. So like I'm more useful than just kicking a field goal. I have like intel. Yeah.
Well, Pat McAfee is a punter, so he has a lot to say.
I literally just answered my own question. I did not know that. He doesn't give me punter energy.
Yeah, he's got big punter energy.
Big punter energy. He's got like, I don't know, he's got like any of the other positions energy.
But as a punter, yeah. So a little aside on Vikings punter at the time, Chris Cluey, just because I went down this rabbit hole and found it interesting. So Cluey is a vocal supporter of gay rights and of sports being more inclusive.
Love that.
And during the heyday of World of Warcraft, Cluey was in one of the best guilds playing a troll rogue, and he was very into League of Legends and played AD carry as Vayne.
You just started speaking another language. Hold on. I got everything up into he liked League of Legends and he played what carry as Blaine? What did you just say?
All right, so this is two things. One, he was super into World of Warcraft, where he played a troll rogue, which is a kind of character in the game, for one of the biggest guilds in North America.
Okay, now we have to pause.
Okay.
Are you telling me that like people on their online teams are in like little groups that are ranked?
Yes. So a little bit of background. I played, and my brother played a lot of World of Warcraft when we were in high school.
My only reference to World of Warcraft is that early viral video of that kid who like freaks out when his mom like shuts down his World of Warcraft and he like loses his mind.
Okay, my mom just canceled my brother's World of Warcraft account and he is freaking out. Damn it, bro!
Yeah, that was my brother and I. But anyway, we played, and you group up in guilds of teams, and then part of what you need to do in the game is like go into these dungeons and things and fight large monsters that can only be killed by like a big pack of actual players. So you all have your different roles and do different things in this big fight as you clear out this mystical dungeon.
And he, as well as being an NFL player, was like a very well respected World of Warcraft
He did
player.
say in an interview that he like leveraged his NFL status a little bit to get in. I'm going to play a little clip from a Conan interview with him that just goes into this a little bit.
Awesome.
You seem atypical of what one might assume from an NFL player.
Well, that's the thing, is that a lot of people have this assumption of NFL players as kind of knuckle-dragging troglodytes because you really only hear about the bad players. Those are the guys who make the news. And there's a lot of very smart NFL players in the locker room. I've had lots of great conversations, but you don't hear about them because they take care of business and then they go home.
You yourself are not gay, and it's not like anyone. You don't have any family member. This was something you took on as just this is a human rights issue.
Right. To me, this is a smaller subset of human rights as a whole. And the thing is that societies that don't practice empathy, if you look at the historical record, every single civilization has failed. They've all gone down, whether it's conflict from within by oppressing your own people or conflict from without, trying to pick a fight with someone and eventually losing. And really the root cause of that is not being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes.
Right.
And it's empathy. It's treat other people the way you'd like to be treated. And I'm seeing that a lot in our society, and I would prefer that we don't go down the drain and instead we endure as a civilization.
Wow. We're wrong. Yeah. I'm going to take the opposing viewpoint. I want to talk about you personally because I found this really fascinating. You're quite an avid online gamer. We were actually talking about this a little bit before the show. And you've ranked third, like nationally, in dungeon progression. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah. So I'm about
You
to
and me
nerd
both,
everyone
Conan.
out here, which will be amazing. I'm sure most of the audience will probably get it. So I played World of Warcraft for a very long time, and I was in a raiding guild. And in raiding, the goal of dungeon progression is to defeat the bosses. It's kind of like solving a puzzle. Each boss has different mechanics.
Right.
And I was in a hardcore raiding guild, which meant we took it very, very seriously. And so at one point, we were third in the United States in terms of raiding progression, which meant we stayed up very late at night and kept pounding our heads against these bosses over and over until we beat them.
That's incredible. So it's amazing because you're a player in the NFL, but it seems like your true dream, what you're most proud of, is that you've rated third nationally in dungeon progression. Yeah, I've done it. You know.
I don't even know how to process that. I had no idea that the NFL had some like fedora kids, some cape kids, I'm sorry, Jim, but that's extremely horny behavior for an NFL player. To me.
Great. Well, not play any more Chris Cluey.
That's amazing. I love to see athletes who acknowledge that they are like also other people who identify with other things and like are progressive, because like I've said this to you a million times, like sports is really obsessed with pretending that it exists in a vacuum. And does not exist within the larger context of the United States or the world. And that sort of drives me crazy. Like something very big will be going on in the world or even in the world of sports, and you turn on ESPN and they're like, let's take a look at this guy who's throwing a baseball.
Yeah, or let's watch highlights from the game where Deshaun Watson has really got it going on.
Yes. Or my favorite, when you're like watching the NFL and you're like, the end zone says end racism, which is a lovely sentiment. And I don't think that the end zone saying end racism is going to do anything.
When no announcer or anyone else will actually say that.
No.
Just put it in the end zone.
Yeah.
And you catch it on camera every once in a while.
I just imagine like an alien coming down to Earth and like watching a football game and being like, why does the end zone say end racism? Was there an what?
Yeah, out of context.
Like, well, we thought this was the one thing we could do to be helpful.
Yeah, I think that it's very cool to hear about like obviously his activism and his gamerness.
Yeah,
because you're like you said, oh, these people are three-dimensional people, and they often intentionally, I think, and maybe from the direction of their teams in the NFL, don't get into this stuff because they're kind of encouraged to just shut up and play.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think you have more room to more be yourself more if you are a kicker or a punter, probably. Yeah. And he also seems like they could fire me. I'll just be really good at World of Warcraft.
Yeah. So Cluey, he is also a writer, and he wrote articles for Deadspin, and he still writes stuff now.
That's cool.
In retirement. But Cluey wrote a scathing article for Deadspin about his being let go by the Vikings.
Oh.
He thinks in this article that it was because of his stances on gay marriage that they let him go, or like kind of just let him go by the wayside. In the article, he alleges that his special teams coach at the time, Mike Prefer, started to harass him about his off-the-field stances and the media attention that he was getting, like in team meetings and stuff, saying incredibly homophobic things in those meetings and around the Vikings facility, letting Cluey know that he didn't agree with what he was doing publicly. Vikings head coach at the time, Leslie Frazier, also didn't do anything to stop this and was critical of Cluey, telling him to stick to punting and avoid distractions. Cluey was let go by the Vikings.
You know, that big distraction making the world a better place.
He kept to his guns and was like, well, this is just how I feel, so I'm going to keep talking about it.
Yeah.
And then he didn't get another punting job after he was let go. And then he thinks it's probably due to these stances and no one wanting to like.
It's so ridiculous because if anything, it makes the NFL look way better.
Yeah.
That someone within their ranks is a publicly good progressive person.
This was, a little bit earlier in the 2000s. So,
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Anyway, that was a little tangent on Kluwe because he's pretty cool.
We weren't into good people in the early 2000s.
All right, so back to the main topic of today. Vikings owner Ziggy Wilf at the time, we're going back to the 2009 NFC Championship
Who
game.
you may remember from the Love Boat episode.
Who had just gotten the team in the Love Boat episode. He went as far as to say that he was going to officially complain to the league about the hits that Favre was taking, but no action was taken.
Okay.
So after this game, Favre's agent also came out saying that he thought the Saints were going after his client, Brett Favre, deliberately. He also cited the Saints' previous game against the Arizona Cardinals, also in the playoffs, where he felt the Saints were doing the same thing to then Cardinals quarterback Kurt Warner. I'm going to play a clip for you, and we're going to watch it back at like slow speed, and you can just keep an eye on Kurt Warner after he throws an interception.
Okay.
So he throws the ball. Intercepted, right? We're panning back. There's Kurt going for the tackle now because like you just threw a pick.
Kurt Warner went to cover on that interception.
Boom.
He got hit hard on the block.
Yikes.
Lays him out, completely blindsides him when he is sort of running down the field after throwing an interception.
What's interesting about this pattern of things is that these guys are like roughing up the quarterback after he has already, like, he doesn't have the ball anymore. And there's kind of nothing he can do.
Yes.
Anymore. You know what I mean? Like, the ball's been intercepted by your team. So, like, what is the point of sacking the quarterback when, like, what's the quarterback going to do?
Well, it wouldn't be called a sack anymore because he doesn't have the ball.
It's only a sack if he has the ball?
Yeah. If he has the ball and he's like going back for a pass and you
so it's just
him.
like a regular tackle.
So yeah,
if
he
threw
the interception. Technically, he could go tackle the ball runner now.
But like he's so far away.
But he's the quarterback and he's just kind of trotting toward it.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh, I messed up. I better go get in on this.
He's doing the thing that I did when I was forced to play like soccer at like day camp or something, where like the other team would get the ball and I'd be like, oh no. And I would like sort of like half-heartedly jog, but being like, I'm really far back. Like no one's going to want me to do anything because I'm not good. And I'd be like, oh, that sucks for us. Oh, it's already in the goal. I guess I'll just go back to where I was standing before.
Yeah. So that. And
I helped.
That's usually what quarterbacks do. Like a play like that happens. They're usually like, oh, I'll kind of run toward it. And everyone knows like, don't hit him. He's a valuable asset to their team.
So yeah, it's interesting to me that they are being so violent with the quarterback when the quarterback has basically lost any like importance in these moments after he has already handed the ball off.
Yes. So the Saints move on to the Super Bowl where they played against Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts.
Oh, Peyton Manning from the commercial.
Yes. You may know him from every commercial on TV during a football game. So
from his friendship with Brad Paisley.
So Drew Brees and the Saints won the game against Peyton Manning and the Colts, claiming the only Super Bowl win for the Saints so far in their history. After the season was over, now in 2010, an anonymous player told the NFL that the Saints targeted Favre and Warner during the playoffs as part of a bounty program set up by Saints defensive coordinator Gregg Williams.
A bounty program.
So a bounty program meaning pay for some sort of action, pay for injuring players or intentionally targeting them to try to mess them up.
Ooh.
So here's where I want to spend a little time introducing the two main coaches involved in our drama today.
Okay.
The first is that defensive coordinator whose name was associated with the very first tip that this anonymous whistleblower gave after the Super Bowl. And that is Gregg Williams.
Okay.
Starting in 1990, Gregg Williams was part of the Houston Oilers franchise.
That's not a team anymore, right?
No.
Okay.
He began as a special teams coordinator. Do you know what that is?
Special teams coordinator is the guy who is in charge of the special teams, overseeing things like kickers and punters and Whoever the other special teams are.
Well, you're very well on your way to getting it right.
Basically, like the person who's in charge of like the other fun positions on the field that aren't like general offense and defense.
Yeah, the other fun positions.
The variety.
Yeah, it kind of is the variety players. So they're responsible for coaching all kicking and punting plays, and then the defensive coverages of those when you're on the other side.
Okay, that makes sense.
And like kick returns and all that kind of stuff. Onside kicks.
Oh, I don't know. You've tried to explain onside kicks to me. Don't do it. I won't get it. It's fine.
We'll save that for a different day. So Gregg Williams remained with the Oilers through them moving to Nashville and becoming the Tennessee Titans in 1999. With the Titans, Williams became very successful as a defensive coordinator. So
coordinating the defense.
Yes. He led the Titans to Super Bowl 34 in the year 2000, Y2K, where they lost to the St. Louis Rams and quarterback Kurt Warner, where he began his career before going to the Cardinals.
Everyone's
a little bit incestuous here.
Everybody's had such a storied career.
Yes.
Rotating around the same 30 teams.
I want to do a quick aside here on Super Bowl 34 because it ended in one of the most dramatic plays in Super Bowl history.
Really?
So I'm going to set this up. Down a touchdown with 6 seconds left. The Tennessee Titans with quarterback Steve McNair have one play left. And I'll just play that.
Okay.
This is them going in to try to, I believe, tie the game.
From the 10, probably the final play of the game in regulation. It is caught by Dyson. Can he get in?
Oh.
No, he cannot. Mike Jones made the tackle. And the Rams have won the Super Bowl.
So what I saw was the Titans quarterback. They're very close to the end zone. And the Titans quarterback threw a pass to some receiving position and he caught it, but it was like he was not in the end zone yet. He had to like get to the end zone and he got tackled, but he still had the ball in one hand and like tried to get it over the line.
Yes, and that
into
reach
the end zone
of Kevin Dyson is one of the most sort of famous or infamous NFL images of almost getting there.
Yeah.
And this is often shown.
Yeah.
And it's just a picture of Dyson, outstretched arm, fully trying to reach there 1 yard
It's like
short.
when your phone alarm is going off in the morning and you put it out of reach so that you wouldn't look at your phone while you're trying to fall asleep. And so you're like, and you're like, I'm going to have to get out of bed to get it.
Yeah, not quite.
So I relate.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's a little aside. So from 2001 to 2003, Gregg Williams was the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, where he did not do well. He then joined Washington, again, as a defensive coordinator, where he had success. And then he was in Jacksonville for a year, and then joined the Saints as their defensive coordinator in 2009 under head coach Sean Payton. Now I'll tell you a little bit about Sean Payton, the man who loved Gregg Williams and what he was up to in Washington and hired him to run the defense in 2009.
Okay.
So Payton was a QB in the NFL, and he wasn't like a good one, but he was a QB in the NFL and had a long coaching career.
Real quick, the longer I am with you and watch football, the more I realize that like sometimes quarterbacks are just like kind of mid, as the youth say, and then just hang around for like, you don't actually have to be an amazing quarterback. You just have to be able to do it and you can have a job.
Yeah. Well, obviously there's backups, but I think what you're talking about is even starters on teams are kind of like Baker Mayfield, who's somehow finds a job every year as a starter for a team because they're like, well, we don't have anyone better than Baker. So I guess it's Baker.
Yeah.
And obviously they're incredible athletes and very few people can do that, as evidenced by this observation.
But it's just funny because like you'll basically be like, oh yeah, this quarterback like is no longer on this team because he had a bad season, whatever. And then like the next year you're like, oh yeah, he's starting for this team. I'm like, I thought everybody was like, he's bad, he got fired. like it's just very weird. Like in no other profession do you hear about a very high level person getting fired because they did their job badly. And then like a few months later, you're like, oh, they're doing the same job at like another good company.
Yeah. And you're like, how?
You're like,
didn't we all see them fail?
Did nobody else? But that being said, that's kind of how the presidency in America works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like every time there's an election, everyone's like, I really thought for sure by now somebody else would have materialized who was like a good option.
Yeah.
But for some reason, no.
This is who we got. So Payton was a QB in the NFL, and he had a long coaching career. But we'll pick up in 2003, where he was hired by Bill Parcells and the Cowboys as an assistant coach and QB coach, who is often credited for bringing in free agent QB Tony Romo. He started to gain...
You mean, get it right, it's Jessica Simpson's ex-husband.
Yes. Yeah. What show was that they were on?
Oh, no. You're confusing Jessica Simpson's other ex-husband, which is Nick Lachey.
Oh, right. They didn't do a reality show with Romo.
No.
Okay.
I don't think they did.
And what was that one called?
The one with Nick Lachey was called Newlyweds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We got that clear. So Sean Payton started to gain notoriety as somewhat of a QB whisperer with Romo and was sought after in the coaching world as a potential head coach for like a different team. Because that's kind of the trajectory of these assistant coaches. They'll be an assistant somewhere in a bunch of different places. And then they'll get sort of, attached to a head coach who likes them. And then they're like, their name starts getting thrown around after the end of the season when there's a bunch of bad teams looking for new coaches. And then people are like, oh, Sean Payton, he's a coordinator over here. Maybe he could be a head coach over here. And they'll get, the bump up, the promotion. So in the wake of Hurricane Katrina, the city of New Orleans was devastated. And in 2005, amidst all of the horror of Katrina, the Saints were bad and they finished 3-13.
I mean, there was a lot going on.
Yeah. So Sean Payton was hired for the head coaching job in New Orleans before the 2006 season.
Okay.
And along with newly acquired quarterback Drew Brees, he turned the team around pretty immediately. The Saints that next year in 2006 went 10-6, made the playoffs, and made it all the way to the NFC Championship game, where they lost to our current hometown team, the Chicago Bears, which was the last time the Bears made it to the Super Bowl.
I was about to say, that threw me off.
I know.
Like,
it actually,
what do you mean?
It seems so long ago that it's like, did that actually happen?
Because I've been in Chicago since 2011, and the Bears have been bad the whole time. And again, I am someone who's been barely paying attention.
But you know that.
But I know that.
Yeah. So as a Packer fan, that's great. Two other names that are somewhat important to know for this story are Saints GM at the time of this, Mickey Loomis, just the general manager, makes decisions on players.
I'm glad that he has an interesting name, because every time you hit me with a name like Gregg Williams, I'm like, that one's going in one ear and out the other.
You got to remember Gregg Williams, though.
Okay,
today.
Gregg Williams, Mickey Loomis.
If it helps, Gregg Williams has 2 G's at the end of Gregg.
That is the most boring.
3 G's in that name. I'm just realizing.
What if they were all at the end? 3 G's, they're all at the end.
Oh, yeah, there's you get the G sound from a different sort of combo of letters at the beginning, and then it's Gregg.
It's spelled R-E-G-G-G.
Gregg. God damn it. So the other person is Saints owner Tom Benson. He had an up and down popularity as their owner. First up for keeping the Saints in New Orleans, and then after Hurricane Katrina, he threatened to move them, which did not sit well, because they're like, wait, we just went through this tragedy and now you're going to try to move our team.
Yeah.
Because of the tragedy, kind of.
Not a good look.
Not a great look.
Not a good look.
But one thing that was a good look for Benson was he was well known for doing the quote Benson boogie after Saints home victories. In true New Orleans fashion, he would do like the second line dance, which is like the line behind the Mardi Gras band line that's just there to party. And he would do one of those, and I'm going to show you a little Benson boogie.
Cool.
He grabs a parasol from cheerleaders and dances.
Oh, no.
So he is dancing with a bunch of
oh my God.
Saints dancers.
It's funny. It reminds me of just like, you know, a drunk guy at a wedding.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that guy's getting into it.
Every once in a while, Tom gets a little weird at a wedding. And everyone's like, I didn't know he could do that.
If you have any sort of like props, like a glow stick or something, like that'll usually sort of appease him.
Yeah, he'll find it.
Yeah.
Even if you try to hide it. we put away all of the fireworks, like the sparklers, and then Tom found
We
them.
didn't even bring kazoos.
No.
I don't know where he got one.
Did he bring a kazoo? Tom, no more horns at our wedding ceremonies in the family. I can't promise anything.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyway, that's Tom Benson. So going back to our original timeline, we're in 2010 again.
Okay.
We've been kind of popping around that time period. This anonymous whistleblower told the NFL that Gregg Williams, 2Gs, was behind a bounty program where the Saints defensive players would get paid extra cash to try to injure or knock out opposing players. That's the allegation.
Oh, boy.
The NFL took this lead seriously enough to open up a full-on investigation, but everyone interviewed denied the existence of anything like was being alleged.
Okay.
So we think, he's going after Favre and Kurt Warner and people like that, and maybe this bounty thing, but there's no credibility to it.
And it's not like on the books anywhere, I'm assuming.
No. At this time, they're like, we don't know. So the investigation into the bounties was put on the back burner after that initial 2010 interview session where they were like looking in, talking to everybody, and they didn't find anything.
I love when this kind of stuff happens and it's like, we did an investigation where we just point blank asked everybody and they said no. What do you think they're going to say?
Yeah. So in 2011, this is a little aside, there's a famous Sean Payton moment when they played the Buccaneers and he gets hit by his own player, Jimmy Graham, and breaks his leg. So
oh, my
God. Show you that really quick.
Jimmy Graham is a big man working against a much smaller corner.
And what we're looking at here is Saints head coach Sean Payton down, and they're attending to his knee. You can see he got shot down there when they threw Graham out of bounds.
I always think it's funny when the announcers don't acknowledge what the camera is on. They're like having a merry old time talking about something else. And then they're like, by the way, what you've been looking at for the last couple minutes. That has happened so many times where we're literally watching like somebody like, I don't know, struggling to move a limb or get up off the ground, and like the announcers are like, oh, this has been like a really great game, let's talk about some other stuff. And then eventually when I guess they get the okay from production, they're like, looks like there might have been a small boo-boo on the field.
You can now get McDonald's fries in baskets.
Tune in Tuesday nights at 7 for reruns of Cold Case. Also, it looks like somebody got their bell rung a little bit. Moving on, NCSI. NCIS.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter.
I don't know.
It doesn't matter at all.
So the reason I played you that Sean Payton getting his leg taken out is because the week after the Saints were playing the Colts and Payton coached from the press box because he like broke his knee or leg or something like that and was healing. And there was just a funny photo of him eating a hot dog that went viral. So he was coaching and they were up by like 60. And so they just like cut to him in the booth on the NBC broadcast, like fully eating a hot dog while his team was still playing.
I mean,
that's how far ahead they were.
I love that. I cannot be near the food at an event if you want me to pay attention to what's happening at the event. It's not like, oh, I can't be near the food because I'll eat too much of it. I'm like, it's just too fascinating and interesting to me. And I will not pay attention to you if I'm like, if I haven't tried everything available yet.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show you that hot dog moment.
Love it.
That was 2011. Like, Sean Payton's just chilling now because this investigation went away. He's eating hot dogs. His team's playing well.
Resting his leg, eating a hot dog.
So now we're in 2012. And new evidence emerges in the bounty investigation that Williams had, in fact, created some kind of bounty program. And then on March 2nd, 2012, ESPN's Adam Schefter, which is a name that you'll probably hear a lot more and you still hear today. He's like the guy that's always on the pulse of what's happening in the NFL, breaking news. He made a report that shook up the sports world. It's a little long and I've cut out a bunch of it, but I'll have you read now the highlighted article.
New Orleans Saints players and at least one assistant coach maintained a bounty pool of up to $50,000 the last 3 seasons to reward game-ending injuries inflicted on opposing players, including Brett Favre and Kurt Warner, the NFL said Friday. Quote, knockouts were worth $1,500 and cart-offs $1,000, with payments doubled or tripled for the playoffs. The NFL said the pool amounts reached their height of $50,000 or more in 2009, the year the Saints won the Super Bowl. The league said between 22 and 27 defensive players were involved in the program and that it was administered by defensive coordinator Gregg, 2Gs Williams, with the knowledge of coach Sean Payton. 4 former Washington players, including defensive end Philip Daniels, told the Washington Post that Williams had a similar system while serving as the defensive coordinator for Washington. Former Bills safety Coy Wire told the Buffalo News that Williams promoted bonuses, injuring opponents while he coached Buffalo. Saints general manager Mickey Loomis failed to stop the bounty program when directed to do so by team owner Tom Benson. While Payton was aware of the investigations but did not pursue them or take steps to stop the bounty program, according to the investigation's findings. Quote, I want to express my sincere regret and apology to the NFL, Mr. Benson, and the New Orleans Saints fans for my participation in the Pay for Performance program while I was with the Saints, Williams said in a statement. It was a terrible mistake, and we knew it was wrong while we were doing it. Instead of getting caught up in it, I should have stopped it. I take full responsibility for my role. I am truly sorry. I have learned a hard lesson, and I guarantee that I will never participate or allow this kind of activity to happen again. The findings, corroborated by multiple independent sources, have been presented to Commissioner Roger Goodell, who will determine the appropriate discipline. He did it he was peddling this all over the country.
Every other team he was on.
When you find out about these things, you're like, okay, there were a lot of people who knew about this, and nobody was just like, hey man, that's really messed up. No way. That being said, he probably presented it in a way that seemed
as a pay per performance plan, which is such a funny sort of smooth it out way of phrasing that after.
Yes, for sure. I think that's absurd and awful. I do appreciate that he did say that he knew it was wrong while he was doing it, because I feel like oftentimes when people apologize for horrible stuff like this, they don't acknowledge that I was fully aware that it was wrong and I still kept doing it anyway, which to me is that's a big, I'm not praising. Is this Gregg Williams speaking? I am not praising this man at all. I'm just saying that apologies that acknowledge I
did it and I knew it.
I did it. I knew it. And there was no question in my mind that this was a good thing to do.
Yeah. So you heard it here. Andi really likes Gregg Williams' apology.
Triple G. I wonder about the defensive players who were not doing this, and whether or not that was really awkward for them.
Right. As we learned sort of in our Northwestern episode, these types of sort of hazy sort of behaviors, because this kind of falls into that category, feel like they're not optional for a lot of people or whatever.
And I feel from watching Hard Knocks, actually, defensive players, I think, don't get, it's just not as glamorous as the offensive positions, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a lot of the time, defensive players just feel a general category. I mean, even in fantasy football, you don't draft individual defensive players. You just
get the whole team.
You pick one team in the NFL and you get their defense. So I think there's not a lot of individuality and not a lot of individual praise given to defensive players, except when I almost murder.
Right, yeah.
Except when I commit involuntary-ish manslaughter.
At least attempted.
Or attempted, yeah.
So that's a good point, that the players on defense might have felt sort of obligated. So the NFL, after this, sent a confidential and detailed memo to all 32 teams with its findings.
Okay.
And I'm repeating a little bit, but it revealed that the Saints had not only targeted Warner and Favre during 2009 in the playoffs, but had also targeted Packers quarterback Aaron Rodgers and Panthers quarterback at the time Cam Newton during 2011's season. According to that memo, Saints linebacker Jonathan Vilma offered $10,000 cash to any teammate who knocked Favre out of that NFC Championship game that we watched the clips from.
So the goal was basically to injure the quarterback enough that quarterback could no longer play and they would bring in the backup?
Yes, that would be like knockouts or card-offs.
Honestly, like as a strategy, this is so lame because it's not even like, let's like do our best to like rise to the challenge of beating this good team. It's like, let's try to get rid of the one person who could have the greatest effect. To make a callback, it's very similar, I assume, to World of Warcraft or League of Legends. If you like beat the boss and the boss gets replaced with like the backup boss, who's like not as good.
The backup monster, who's
been like working with the original monster.
Yeah, who only has 7 arms instead of 10, and breathes sort of middle of the road fire instead of hot fire.
Yeah, it's like sunburn level fire.
Yeah, like,
it's not gonna like kill you.
I wish I would have worn some SPF.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. After later investigations in the 2012 offseason, the NFL also found evidence that the Saints put bounties on several Seahawks players during the 2011 wildcard playoff games, and it was revealed that the Saints bounty on Favre was worth up to $35,000 during that NFC Championship game. In addition to Jonathan Vilma's contribution to the pot, there was a agent of Reggie Bush, who was the running back for the Saints at the time, Michael Ornstein. He chipped in $10,000.
Oh my
Joe
God.
Vitt, assistant linebackers coach, pledged $5,000. So like actual coaches and other players were like putting their own personal money into this pot.
As someone who formerly worked in like development for arts administration, I really feel very offended by the fact that they're using the term pledge.
Yeah.
Like this is like, NPR doing a pledge drive. Like,
Right.
All right, come on, guys.
Like you can watch Ken Burns baseball if you pledge money to PBS.
Exactly.
But instead it's knock Brett Favre's head off.
Yeah, you can watch somebody suffer a permanent injury to their brain.
Yes. So the league found that Sean Payton not only knew about this whole scheme, but tried to cover it up during both of the league investigations, the original one and then like the second finding where they actually found stuff. During the 2010 investigation, Sean Payton told Gregg Williams and Joe Vitt, the linebackers coach who put in $5,000, to make sure our ducks are in a row when the league interviews you. So, pretty on the nose there. I did want to do a little background on Michael Ornstein because that's the agent of Reggie Bush. So one of their best players at the time,
I've
running
heard the
back
name.
Reggie Bush. He, came from USC out of college, super great athlete. His agent is this guy, Michael Ornstein, and he's like a total criminal. He was emailing people from the team from jail at the time for a different scandal that he was involved in as an agent to like put in money for the bounties. And that was part of the evidence that the investigation uncovered was an email from Ornstein, sort of like maybe joking, maybe not about the bounty thing. So here's a little AP News article that came out around the time of all of this about Ornstein that I have to have you read a little bit.
Okay. Players Union NFL disagree on context of bounty email. Great. An email from an imprisoned friend of the Saints coaching staff. Oh, that's such a burn. With a postscript saying, quote, "Put me down for $5,000 on Green Bay quarterback Aaron Rodgers," has become another sore point between players being punished for New Orleans' bounty system and the NFL. The email, obtained by the Associated Press, was written from prison by marketing agent Mike Ornstein shortly before the Saints' 2011 season opener against the Packers. Ornstein once represented Reggie Bush and later got to know members of the Saints coaching staff. The bulk of Ornstein's note to the Saints discusses his experiences in prison and offers sometimes brash words of encouragement to various coaches, including then Saints defensive coordinator Gregg Williams. The last line states, quote, "P.S. Gregg Williams put me down for $5,000 on Rodgers." Ornstein says now that was written, quote, "in total jest." Oh, that old chestnut. Yeah. Clearly, I was joking.
I also love that he was writing them about his time in jail. They make wine in the toilets.
He's doing his little orange is the new black moment.
Yeah.
Ornstein was sentenced to 8 months in federal prison, which he served in Florence, Colorado, for conspiring to scalp Super Bowl tickets and hawking fake, quote, game-worn jerseys. That mean jerseys that the players wore? Yeah. Okay. He was released last fall. Quote, "It's a running joke going for 3 years," Ornstein said in a phone interview this week, explaining that he had been kidding Williams about bounties ever since the NFC Championship game in 2010, after which the Vikings told the NFL that they believed the Saints had a bounty on quarterback Brett Favre. While I totally believe that this is the kind of man who would make a lame, outdated joke.
Yeah.
That's not what happened.
So that was mostly to show you some of the funny stuff of Ornstein writing this email from jail saying it was all a joke. Jeez, take a joke.
Oh my God. This is.
But his email was
hilarious.
one of the main pieces of evidence of okay, we actually have some paper trail here.
Yeah. So after his description of what he ate for lunch.
Yeah.
In the prison cafeteria.
The grilled cheese, surprisingly good. I think it was real cheddar.
I guess it's hard to mess up grilled cheese.
Yeah, it really is. Especially if you got a tomato soup, which they did have.
They did. And it wasn't too bad. I'm trying to watch my sodium, so I didn't have all of it. Anyway, I'd like to put $5,000 down to kill Aaron Rodgers. Have a great life. Goodbye.
Yeah, maybe I'll see you after him now.
LOL.
So the NFL found that Sean Payton and Loomis' actions amounted to conduct detrimental to the league. The NFL found that no club money had been used in funding the bounty pool.
What does that mean?
No actual Saints on the books money.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. It found that...
Well, then it's fine.
The Saints organization was guilty on the whole of conduct detrimental to the league due to Williams and the players' maintenance of the bounty pool. Basically, the NFL finds this to be illegal.
Yeah.
All of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So shortly after the Saints bounty system came to light, 4 former Washington players, which was kind of mentioned in that Schefter report, as well as a coach, told the Washington Post that Williams operated a similar system while he was with Washington when he was the defensive coordinator from 2004 to 2007. And then the sanctions came down. And in March, the NFL issued sanctions to Saints coaches and front office personnel for their roles in all this. Williams was suspended indefinitely and was banned from applying for reinstatement until the end of 2012. Payton was suspended for the entire 2012 season, effective April 1st, which was the first time I think a coach was ever suspended for a full season by the NFL. And then players, Jonathan Vilma and others, were fined and suspended, and all these different suspensions came down.
And Ornstein wasn't allowed to have dessert in prison.
He went back to prison where he wasn't allowed to have dessert. And I want to play a little Roger Goodell interview with Rich Eisen, our favorite, sort of summing up his reasons for these punishments, and just so you can hear it from someone other than me.
I think this is the first time I will have seen and heard Roger Goodell. Oh, and not just read his name.
You're in for very underwhelming.
Why did you hand down the punishment that you handed down on the Saints?
Well, Rich, it's very clear. We have a serious violation of an existing rule that threatens the health and welfare of our players. In addition, this went on for three years, and there were denials throughout that period. And meanwhile, there continued to be risks to our players and to the integrity of our game.
Do you feel you were lied to, Commissioner?
Clearly, we were lied to. We investigated this back in 2010. We were told that it was not happening. It continued for another 2 years until we got credible evidence late in the 2011 season.
To those who feel you have brought the hammer down too hard, what would you say?
I don't think you can be too hard on people that put at risk our players' health and safety. If you weren't aware of it as head coach, you should have been aware of it. And that's a critical factor for me. As head coach, who clearly it specifically states in your contract that you supervise the coaches and the players, this is something as a head coach you need to be held accountable for and responsible for. because all of us are responsible for maintaining the integrity of the league and also making sure we're doing everything possible to ensure the safety of our players.
Yeah, he's underwhelming.
Yeah, actually, the one thing that jumped out to me there was in our Northwestern episode, we talked about Pat Fitzgerald, like basically trying to play the card of like, I didn't know it was happening.
Yeah.
And Roger Goodell made the point, which we made there, that a head coach, part of your job is to know, is to ask questions,
so
ask around,
regardless
and
if
know.
you didn't know what's happening, you still messed up.
Yeah.
So like you can't get out of it by being like, I wasn't aware of it. It's like, well, then you're not doing your job.
Yeah. Okay. So now that all happens. The punishments are being levied. And then in 2012, like after this stuff is going down, a sort of smoking gun is released to the public. Another one. As a lot of the stuff that was there was like sort of hidden behind closed doors, like what they found. And there's like that email and there's some other like sort of documents and things and just general.
They were like, we just have this one prison email because this guy was dumb enough to email from prison.
And, a ton of interviews and firsthand accounts, but no actual like thing of we saw it in action exactly as it was described until a filmmaker named Sean Pamphilon, who was following the Saints for a different documentary unrelated to this scandal, released a tape from his filming and recording within the locker room of a game that the Saints were playing against San Francisco. So this is a Gregg Williams speech pregame.
Little 32, I want to knock the fuck out of him. He has no idea what he's in for. When he's on the sideline, we got to turn that motherfucker over, turn the coaches over, turn the spectators over, go get that motherfucker on the sideline. Remember me. I got the first one. Go lay that motherfucker out. We're going to dominate the line of scrimmage, and we're going to kill the fucking head. Every single one of you, before you get off the pile, affect the head. Early, affect the head. Continue, touch and hit the head. They're going to come in. They're going to be shocked with our contact. We need to find out in the first 2 series of the game, the little wide receiver, number 10, about his concussion. We need to decide whether Crabtree wants to be a fake-ass prima donna or he wants to be a tough guy. We need to find that out. He becomes human. He starts to take out that outside ACL. We need to decide on how many times we can beat Frank Gore's head. We need to decide how many times we can bull rush and we can fucking put Vernon Davis's ankles over the pile. We need to decide, and when they are fearing us, they give us the ball.
Yeah. So that pretty much says it all. I was pretty shocked. I had never heard that before researching this.
So this guy was filming a documentary for other reasons and then ended up recording this.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I've said this to you before, but like realizing that like the speeches that these men give in these locker rooms are, first of all, so tacky. Like, let's just be clear.
They're very football speech.
It's so football speech. They do tons of like, it's like they took one public speaking class and they were like, repeat the sentence 3 times, making 3 slightly different points.
Kill the head.
It's like that sounds like a crazy cult leader. Like that does not sound like a football coach to me. That sounds like a very like mentally unwell person, like trying to rile people up to commit murders and crimes.
Yeah. So as you heard in there were like specific things like Frank Gore, the running back, go after his head. Michael Crabtree, like one of their players, like go after his head, like
kill the head and the body dies.
Go after a guy who had previously had a concussion and see how that concussion's doing. Meaning like hit him again and see if it like shakes him up again.
This player becomes human when we break his knees or tear his ACL or whatever.
Literally saying attack the outside ACL, which is like the out knee muscles, which are like the most fragile, the most sort of
and that's like a career-ending injury.
Like holy crap! Like he is really calling for specific damages. At one point, they didn't say it because it was like alluded to, but he was like rubbing his fingers together when he was saying, I got the first one.
Yeah.
Meaning like, I will pay for the first injury. So like he just said it all.
On me.
Yeah.
Bring me Frank Gore's head and you can have a little treat.
All the player suspensions were eventually removed. The 4 players who were going to be like suspended after they appealed it, because they basically put the blame on the coaches.
That's okay. Yeah. I see that.
But yeah, this is where it sort of ends for that drama. Like Sean Payton is held out a year and Gregg Williams is fined and like cut out for the rest of that year. And yeah.
Were there any notable injuries that this caused, like life ruining injuries that this caused? I mean, I hope not, but
there was one that we didn't really get into because this was what happened with Washington. But when he was with Washington, there was a hit from Washington on Peyton Manning when he was on the Colts that like tweaked his neck in a way that they think caused like his career to eventually end.
Oh my God.
He, persevered and won a Super Bowl with the Broncos after that, but like he was never the same after that hit, apparently. And that was part of
interesting
these bounties.
I hope that jolly old Peyton Manning is planning something evil.
Yeah.
He and Brad Paisley are cooking up a song that's going to ruin Sean Payton's life. Or no, ruin Gregg Williams' life.
So I want to do a quick little debrief on where are they now for these guys.
Sure.
So Gregg Williams, after the scandal, he went on to coach again in 2013. So he was out for the 1 year and they just let him back in for the Titans, and then moved around the league as a defensive coordinator until 2020 when he was let go by the Jets and his coaching career came to an end for now. I did want to play.
For now, I'm sure they'll trot him back out at some point.
Yeah. I did want to play one clip from when Hard Knocks was covering the Browns of Gregg Williams still going strong with his aggro guy mentality. Not about bounties, but you'll see.
Get your ass back there, you goofball! When you look at yourself on film and you wonder why I cut your ass, you look at effort first. We're walking around. Get to the huddle. When you don't get in and out of the huddle, when you don't substitute, when you don't communicate, when you don't fight, you don't belong.
Anyway.
I hate this man. This man is trash. He's complete garbage. His whole like aesthetic is like Guy Fieri and Rivers Cuomo.
I was going to say he looks like an angry Fieri.
Yeah, he sucks.
That was Gregg Williams in a job after his Saints job.
I hate men whose entire style of leadership is just yell and like display the kind of like anger that like honestly makes you like fearful, not because they're gonna do something, but because you're like, there's something wrong with this person.
Yeah, like, whoa, like, are you gonna hurt yourself?
Like like sometimes even in like the theater world, you get like directors who like don't resort to like physical violence or anything, but like sometimes I've seen directors get like angry to the point where you're like, okay, you need to be seeing a professional about this.
This is about more than this game.
Yes.
So Sean Payton, after the 2021 season, Saints QB Drew Brees retired, and Sean Payton announced his retirement too.
2021. Yeah. So we've skipped ahead a bunch.
Yeah, we skipped a bit much. He just came back and kept coaching the Saints all the way until then. People didn't really see this coming because Payton made it through Bountygate and was still considered one of the league's best coaches. And in the league where, coaching changes happen all the time, Payton was still very in demand. In 2023, Payton was ready to coach again, and he was actually hired by the Denver Broncos for this year. We'll get back to that in just a second. But I have to mention, as we sort of wrap up here, the whole Bountygate scandal. There was that year where Payton was suspended. During that year, apparently, he coached his kids' like middle school football team.
That should not be allowed given everything you just said to me.
Yeah. And the events of that year where he was suspended for, contributing to this bounty program where he coached his son's team was made into a movie starring Kevin James as Sean Payton in like a comedic romp.
Why do you have to do that to Kevin James? Why do you have to do that to Kevin James? I love Kevin James. I think he's great.
Anyway, in that movie, I have to show you. Sean Payton makes an insane cameo.
He's in the movie?
So Kevin James plays Sean Payton. Sean Payton plays like a janitor or something with like a terrible wig in the movie. And I'm showing you it now.
Lionel.
Coach, it's so good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
I missed you so much.
I miss you too.
We really suck without you.
So Sean Payton in the movie about his own story plays a janitor who like goes, "We really sucked without you," to Sean Payton, played by Kevin James.
Did Sean Payton fund this movie?
It seems like it. Seeing that cameo, you're like, oh, this is totally like he got a lot of money for this.
This movie is like pro Sean Payton propaganda.
Super. Yeah.
Also, yeah, that wig is miserable.
He basically plays a janitor, like a Goodwill Hunting style janitor.
Yeah, I was
like,
about to say.
Hi, good to have you back, coach.
I hated that so much.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, Sean Payton, he left the league when Drew Brees did, and then 2023 he comes back as the Broncos coach.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a little bit more drama, which I think you heard a little bit about from this last offseason. So Sean Payton's getting ready to coach the Broncos, which he just started doing this year. And he criticized the former coach of the Broncos, who they sucked last year, Nathaniel Hackett, who was in Hard Knocks as a quarterback sort of offensive coach for the Jets now, buddy of Aaron Rodgers, by saying it might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in NFL history that Nathaniel Hackett did last year with the Broncos.
I would argue that maybe one of the worst NFL coaching jobs in history was the one that he did when he encouraged his players to commit physical crimes and murders.
I'll follow that with, at the start of his Broncos career, he's 0-3 to start this season. This legendary coach that's coming in to save the day, that's so much better than what they did last year. He is 0-3, and he just lost to the Dolphins 20-70 this last weekend in one of the biggest blowouts in NFL history. And I think the Dolphins coach, Mike McDaniel, though he has just sort of put this aside, I think he rubbed it in this last weekend because of who he was playing. I have to know, as a guy who knows, Mike McDaniel is someone we'll talk about later, seems very savvy and very knowledgeable about the NFL.
He does, yeah.
I think there was part of him that was like, we can put up 70 on these guys. We're just going to do it.
70?
Yeah, 70-20. They scored, I think, the third most points in NFL history in a game.
Oh my
against him, just to kind of rub it in for all this whole backstory.
See, I like that because to me, Mike McDaniel is included in the Zaddies list from one of our former episodes. I like the idea that there are younger coaches who are like, I'm not going to forget about what you did and that you're a bad person. I'm not going to do anything, but I'm just going to do a really good job of coaching my team.
Yeah. When I can do something to affect you, I'll not hold back.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not going to be an actively mean thing to you. It's going to be me just being amazing at my job.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a little bit of karma, I think, happening to Payton this year after all this. So in conclusion, Andi, what are your sort of final reactions, and how would you tell this story other than as a campy, terrible Kevin James movie? How would you tell the honest story?
Okay. So the first thing I want to say is a message to the NFL, which is you're doing such a bad job by continuing to employ absolutely mediocre men. I'm sorry, but if your style of coaching is just screaming or threatening or that stuff doesn't actually work in the long term. You can maybe get one Super Bowl out of that, as we saw. But that's such bad. That's just a guy being bad.
Yeah, because all the other times it didn't work.
Yeah.
With all the other teams.
Exactly.
In every other situation he was in.
I have so much more of a critical thinking around this whenever I hear the term oh, he's one of the most revered coaches of all time. I was was he just a horrible person? Was he just really mean or really manipulative or got a book of like great quotes and just shouted them at people. Like it makes me question a little bit. So that's my message to the NFL. Is Roger Goodell still have his job?
He does.
Oh, okay. Roger Goodell, give me a call. I have some thoughts. Maybe like Brene Brown. She'd be a great NFL coach.
Really?
Yes, she would.
What would she encourage?
Self-love and self-care.
How would that help the offense?
I mean, self-care and self-love helps everyone.
Okay.
Get out of here. Brene Brown should be an NFL coach.
Of the Browns?
No, because I hate the Browns.
They need some help.
They do. I mean, she would definitely get Deshaun Watson out of there. Anyway, how would I portray this? I would portray this as an interpretive dance piece.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. That you would see on like a college campus where you'd be like, the students are really trying to say something with their art. And whether or not they're succeeding doesn't matter because it's a student project. And it would be a lot of like big dance moments where like the player, like they're trying to be the players on the field and they're like tackling each other and injuring each other. And yeah, it's like a...
They'd be like, I got concussed.
Yes, exactly. Yes, there's a lot of this. Yeah, it's like a shitty college dance performance. That's all I want to give to Sean Payton. I don't want to give a movie. I will not make Kevin James do that again. He deserves so much more.
Well, thank you so much for listening to our recap of Bountygate. You can follow us on Instagram or TikTok or
our Patreon
if you want bonus episodes, which will be coming out once a month if you want an extra episode from us. Yeah. Or if you need to, send us an email from prison detailing what you want from us. And if you want to put in $5,000 on Aaron Rodgers.
If you want to donate $5,000 to our Patreon from prison, like that's fine.
That'd be great. We can even get a separate PayPal link for you.
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Have a good one. Bye.